Oliver is currently the District Emergency Coordinator for the ARRL LAX Northeast District. And he's kind of doing everything in amateur radio, especially fond of digital modes of communication. And he's experimented with AREDN, Arden, Mesh, and NBEMS, as well as other modes on WinLink, on VHF, UHF, and HF. And he's exploring and playing with NVIS. So he's been involved for quite a while and enjoys amateur radio. So we welcome you, Oliver. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and it's all yours.
Well, thank you so much, Pat, and thank you so much to everybody in the group for being here tonight. A little bit of personal thing. Claude was the person who actually introduced me my first year as a ham to Baker to Vegas at Mile Out. And so we worked together for 10 hours. And I have to say, at the end of that, I was ready to crawl back to base. You know, it was a long day, but thanks to Claude's tutelage, I got through that really well and actually been going back ever since. So let me start my presentation. And what I'm doing here is I'll move the window with all your videos to my left. I've got two screens here. So when I'm looking at this side, I'm actually looking at you. And then we'll talk a little bit about WinLink. Did you feel it? Before I share my screen right now, how many of you are familiar with WinLink? Just show of hands. No? Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about that. How many of you are familiar with Did You Feel It? Have you ever filled it out on the web after an earthquake? No? Okay, good. That gives me a good idea of what we need to talk to. One of the wonderful things about having a smaller group is you don't have to use the chat. So if you have a question at any point in time, just stop me, call out, and say, hey, listen, what are you talking about here? And let's go through the slides relatively quickly. I do want to show you hands-on what it takes to send a WinLink Did You Feel It message. And given that you live in Santa Clarita, let's ask one more question. How many of you remember the Northridge earthquake? Okay, quite a few other earthquakes. When I took my CERT training with LA County up at Fire Camp 2 here by JPL, the instructor we had, a wonderful man. He actually lives in Santa Clarita, and he has to, at the time he had to commute, he's retired now, but he had to commute to the city in order to, that's where his fire station was. And he says, I'm nervous every time I come across that bridge up there. So, you know, I mean, it's earthquakes, right? We live in earthquake country. All right, let's talk about WinLink Did You Feel It? As Pat already said, I'm Oliver K6OLI, and I use the term we a lot. And you'll see that it's not the royal we, it's because ARRL LAX Northeast, it's a lot of people helped with this. The WinLink development team helped with this. People from all over the West Coast helped with developing WinLink Did You Feel It? So this is a community effort, and I hope we can invite you to that community and have you use it. So it's a whole lot of fun. By the way, this was one of our Mesh Madness days we had before COVID. So good fun there. All right. ARRL LAX Northeast supports hospitals in the LA area, just like ARRL LAX does. There's 70 hospitals in the LA area. I think technically Santa Clarita is part of Northwest, just in case you're wondering. And we're here in the East. There are 24 hospitals under our care. And as you know, amateur radio operators are always in short supply. But enough about that. I thought I'll give you this as a little shocker right up front, right? So this is a USGS scenario. This is not an earthquake that has happened, but this is how the USGS has actually run the data. And they've asked themselves, well, what happens if there's an earthquake in the Santa Susana Pass, and Santa Clarita would be among the most affected regions. And we in ARRL LAX, we look at these scenarios very often. And we ask ourselves which repeaters would be affected, which gateways would be affected, what if that goes down, and so on. So, but I just want to give you this as a little shocker. This is what would happen in a Santa Susana fault earthquake. And that's actually a pretty big earthquake for only being a 6.9. If you look at the affected area, that's quite hefty. And that's why we're here tonight, to actually talk a little bit about preparedness and how WinLink-DYFI can actually benefit you and everybody in this case. The main question that WinLink-DYFI is trying to answer is, how do we fix the donut hole? And that's a term that Dr. Walt of the USGS coined. The issue with any disaster, not just earthquakes, but the issue with any disaster is you never really get information from the most affected area, i.e. the donut hole, because for a variety of reasons. Commercial communications tend to be down in those areas. Power failures are widespread. People, quite frankly, have other problems than communication at the time. And again, quite a lot of people don't know when to send. They want to send the Did You Feel It report, but if your cell phone isn't working, if your internet isn't up, you won't get it out of the area. And this is something that I want to point out for amateur radio operators. Did You Feel It is more of a concept as well, because there are many, many donut holes. It could be power outages, wind events in Santa Clarita. I know you're very familiar with Santa Ana winds and wind events coming through the passes. Fires, big topic in California, all over California. You get these donut holes, and we as amateur radio operators can really, really make a difference. And I hope after tonight you start thinking a bit about this, about how you can contribute, whether it's Did You Feel It or other services after an earthquake. We'll talk a little bit about what is Did You Feel It, who uses Did You Feel It reports, how Did You Feel It started with WinLink, and how all radio amateurs can contribute. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about the lessons we've learned in ARRL LAX Northeast and beyond through exercises. One of the things that we're very big on in ARRL LAX Northeast is exercise, exercise, exercise. It is a totally different thing operating from your home QTH, even if you switch to battery, than having to schlep all your stuff outside, setting it up in an area you may not be 100% familiar with, and actually making these connections. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'm open to your suggestions as well. So what is Did You Feel It? Here's the scientific background. Essentially, Did You Feel It measures intensity, and that is the observed effects on the Earth's surface after an earthquake. And it's subjective. People tell you what the intensity is based on the damage they see. Magnitude, by contrast, is something that's measurable, usually with instruments, and that gives you a number, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the intensity really tells you what the effect on the Earth's surface is, and that's really, really important information. And observational data in this respect is extremely important. So your observations really matter, because it also refers to the effects that are actually experienced in a place. For those of you who remember Northridge, it looked very different when you looked at it yourself. I wasn't there for that, but you know, doing these talks, I've actually been doing a lot of research on this. So what's the difference between magnitude and intensity? Well, magnitude measures the energy released by an earthquake. It's a single number, and it's measurable. It's pretty straightforward, but the magnitude stays the same. The intensity, as we've mentioned, is measuring the effects of that earthquake on the Earth's surface. The couple of main differences. Magnitude is a fixed value. Think about magnitude in terms of radio talk. Let's do radio talk as a comparison. So magnitude would be your wattage. If you have a 100-watt radio putting 100 watts out, that number doesn't change. It's 100 watts, right? That measures the magnitude of the energy that you're releasing into your system. Intensity measures, if you think about it, kind of the signal strength. The farther you get away, the more your signal drops off. And that's the same for intensity. Think of a light bulb, same thing. The farther you get away, the dimmer the light is. And that's one of those major differences. We talked about the energy being released, and magnitude is objective. So you can measure that with instrumentation. They have a really good sense almost immediately after an earthquake what the magnitude is. The intensity is subjective, and it can take a while to actually get a good sense of what the effects were. And that's why that reporting is so extremely valuable. And because it's reporting by people, they use something called the modified Mercalli scale, and you can actually look this up on the USGS website as well as Wikipedia. But take a look at some of the language here, because it'll come back when we show you the actual form, right? Strong, felt by all, many frightened, some heavy furniture was moved, a few instances of fallen plaster, damaged slight. That would be an intensity 6 earthquake, right? So things like that help you describe. The language is already established, right? And that's really where the intensity is coming from. They're asking you a series of questions that have that language in there because they want to understand what is it you observe. And for those of you who are doing CERT, you learned how to go around, do a 360 of your location, maybe even of your neighborhood. Make those observations when you're doing that. Either write them down or make a mental note, because that'll come back when you send did you feel it, and pretty much any damage report that you may submit to your fire department, sheriff's office, or the oil company for that matter. And it's great you mentioned that, Pat, because we'll come back to that. So who uses Did You Feel It report? Well, 2019, Ridgecrest. I don't know how you guys felt it. For us, it was in Pasadena. It was about 38 seconds of shaking, the M7.1. The first one we didn't feel all that much. It was on July 4th. We're actually all standing in South Pasadena getting ready for a parade. But the M7.1 we felt for about 38 seconds. One of the things we do whenever an earthquake happens here is we start counting, right? 1, 2, 3. And if you get past 30, you know it's a big earthquake. But understand that they got 42,000 for the second earthquake and 51,000 Did You Feel It reports via the internet. So USGS is used to receiving massive amounts of data, provided people have internet, right? So what happened with the Ridgecrest M7.1, there were these Did You Feel It reports, and you can actually see the donut here a little bit. I'll show you a different graphic later on where you can see it even better. And they put that data together with the strong motion data they get. They built these shake maps that all of you, I'm sure, have seen on the USGS website. If not, we can do that. And then within an hour, USGS puts out a product called Pager, right? Which is their rapid response information. And that's what your local EOC gets. That's what your fire department subscribe to. That's what your what many companies subscribe to. I'll show you in a moment. But you get a really good sense if you look at the bottom right here on selected city exposure. You kind of get a really good sense. Holy buckets! There was a magnitude and modified Mercalli scale of 7. That's pretty high there with a population of 28,000. But you can see if that same earthquake 7.1 had happened in LA with 3.7 million people and about 10 million of us in LA County, that would have been a different magnitude of a problem. But this report usually goes out, the first one within an hour. They keep updating this as the event unfolds. But by and large, and we'll come back to that later, we want to get these reports out of the area within an hour of this. And for us in ARRL Northeast, as well as for other groups, that has changed how we manage our radio networks. Pager info on Carson. This is kind of a blow up of the same information. We talked about the first pager came out there in an hour and 12 minutes. And I don't know whether you guys felt it in Carson. You can see we could feel it quite well. There are a couple of users that use Pager that I think are really interesting. Mercy Corps, CNN News, any type of news organization usually gets that. USAID, the United States Northern Command, for those of you with a military background, right? Shakecast is another product that draws on Did You Feel It? That gets information to Walmart. They can call Travelers Insurance, Target, the Port of Los Angeles. Shake maps are used by CalEMA, FEMA, Homeland Security, Department of Health and Human Services. The White House wants to have an idea of what's happening in an area. And Did You Feel It specifically is the LA Department Public Works, LA Unified School District, Sempra Energy, Department of Veteran Affairs, and of course, you, the end users. You can go to the website, you can see the information. as it's coming in. So I think we have to keep in mind that this information is extremely valuable. One of the things I learned from Dr. Walt when he gave the presentation to us was the did you feel it information they received over the last couple of years has actually changed how quite a few utilities in our area look at risk, and how they've actually strengthened certain areas where the instrumentation was not giving them the full picture, but once they had the did you feel it information, I said, wow, there's a lot more we need to look at in that particular area. So it's extremely valuable information. What's the difference between did you feel it on the web and WinLink? The answer is the interface. That's where you enter the information. Other than that, it's the exact same information that goes to USGS, and it goes to the exact same database. There are a couple of small differences on the amateur radio side that are pretty important for amateur radio operators, and also gives actually USGS a different way of looking at data. But understand that whether you fill it out on the web or whether you fill it out in amateur radio, the information goes to the same place. It goes to the USGS. Couple of things, I'll show you this, I'll just point that out here. There is an exercise option in the WinLink version, which there isn't on the website, right? Because on the website, it's all real data. On WinLink, you actually have the choice to send an exercise, which is great for groups that want to practice this. And you actually can send real data, like we've done at the Carson earthquake and a variety of other earthquakes. The other thing is the website information is essentially completely anonymous. In WinLink, your call sign is actually sent with a report. And that increases the confidence that the USGS has in that data. You're putting in your call sign, putting a good name to that data, which of course makes them a lot more comfortable with the data you're sending in, because they're saying, that is somebody we can rely on, who's been trained, who's done things like you're doing tonight, to actually listen to what kind of information is looked for, and they send in that information. And we kind of expect that information to come in from the USGS point of view, even when there's no internet anymore. And from that database, the USGS does models with that. They look at the data really closely. It feeds into the science community. From the science community, can go to hazard mitigation. First responders use it. Utilities, it informs policies, construction, architecture, etc. All of that information is aggregated and looked at. And of course, it also goes direct to them through the pager products and other products. And then, of course, it goes straight to the public, because it is public information where you can see these aggregated maps. They don't say who sent a report on the closest granularity, the lowest granularity they have is by zip code, right? But they don't put your name to it on the website. That's data that they keep for their own purposes. But other than that, understand that it's the same data set. We worked very closely with the USGS to develop that. And Greg, KJ6SJT, and Vince Kittoriano from USGS, and Greg from WinLink development team actually did this in record time. They worked really, really closely together to make this work. How did you feel it via WinLink start? Believe it or not, through the website. I sent them an email and said, hey, listen, I'm with ARRL LAX, an amateur radio operator. Do you think this would be useful, being able to do did you feel it or anything, doing amateur radio post an earthquake? And that led to conversations, a series of conversations where the donut problem was, or the challenge, I should say, the donut challenge was being mentioned. And I said, one of the things about amateur radio operators is you don't have to fly us in. You don't have to stage us. We already live in the area. Something happens in Santa Clarita, God forbid tonight, but you're already there. You already have the amateur radios. You have the skills to move traffic, and you have, you're really wanting to protect your communities. That's what we're doing here, and I'm sure that's why you're here tonight. So that was in May 2020. By June 2020, we had all the stakeholders put together, and we're collaborating on the Did You Feel It? And by July, we actually released the WinLink form. One of the things that we did was we invited groups from all the West Coast, all over Arizona, Nevada, and Hawaii to actually help with the testing and so on. So it was really a group effort. The amateur radio community as a whole really rose to the occasion and did a phenomenal job making sure that it's stress tested and the product was good and we can actually move this traffic. And then 2020, we already had the first shakeout, and that was an extremely successful shakeout. I'll show you a couple of slides on that in a moment. And then in 2021, there was an EOS article. EOS is a science, geological science magazine. And if you're interested, I can give you the link. But that kind of showed the view from the USGS side and how valuable they think your contributions as amateur radio operators are. USGS has been really happy with the way these things are going. There's some small things that we can address through training. I'll mention some of them tonight, but understand that the ability of amateur radio operators to send traffic when other communications means may have been compromised or delayed is extremely valuable. And so we invite your participation, not only tonight, but going forward in all these events, even when you do not feel it. And we'll show you how to fill that out when you're not feeling an event that, say that maybe in Northridge or Carson or whatnot, and you didn't feel it. That's valuable information because it helps the USGS establish event boundaries. We talked about this. These were on the right here. These are, did you feel it in 2018? So it is a big program, understand that. And there were areas groups from all over the area. The WinLink development team, Greg, KJ6SJT, and Mike N6KCB were the driving forces behind that. And at USGS, David Wald, Dr. David Wald, I should say, the geophysicist, he's kind of the father of the Did You Feel It program overall. And Vince Kitoriano, the programmer, they were absolutely brilliant and are absolutely brilliant to work with. Understand that for them, they said, well, let's see how this works out. And it's working out extremely well. We'll talk a little bit about Shakeout today. What we did as a capstone exercise when we put the WinLink Did You Feel It together first, we invited San Diego areas, Hawaii areas, and a couple of other groups to actually participate in what we called the Gordo Super Event. We asked everybody to watch a really cheesy earthquake movie and report on what they saw there. If you saw the one with the rock, that's the one I chose, and it was kind of crazy, right? But the point there was we located at a Gordon West. That was where the location was supposed to be, QTH. So it was fun, and that kind of proved that it worked. We worked out the email address. As you can see here, the two Did You Feel It reports automated. The USGS set up a specific email address for WinLink reports. So that's how the information can be sent there. It only accepts WinLink traffic. And that's kind of really where we really tested this and said, let's drive it into the ground. Let's see what happens. And we couldn't break it. And we knew it's working. This is a map that the USGS produced for us after the Gordo exercise. And you can kind of see where the reports were coming from. We had up there, Marin County, one report, but the bulk were coming here from the LA County, Ventura County area, and of course our friends in San Diego, and of course CREBC in Tijuana, who sent these reports. So, and you'll see those groups crop up again. Of course, our friends in Kern County, in your county, they're not as populous as we are, but they're extremely highly motivated to do this. Obviously, many of them experienced Ridgecrest directly. So how can all radio amateurs contribute? Again, we come back to the donut hole. This is actually a slide from the USGS, how they explain the donut hole during the Salt Lake City earthquake not too long ago in Utah. And you can see, can you guys see my mouse when I move that? Okay, you can see here where the epicenter was. They actually didn't get a lot of reports for a couple of hours. They got most of the reports from the outside, so you can really see this donut hole here, and you can also see over time how the donut hole is filling in as people's internet is coming back, as they have the time and leisure to actually send these reports in. So that amateur radio can help solve the donut challenge. Amateur radio is also a natural mesh network. We already exist in the communities. We already talk with one another. We can pass messages out of area and locally. So we already exist. You don't have to bring us in. We're path neutral. By and large, we're focused on getting the message out. How we do that, if the internet's working, we can send it with WinLink through the internet, no problem. If it's not working, we can try VARA, we can try VARA HF, we can try all these things, right? We can VARA FM, we can do Arden Mesh, whatever it takes to get that message through. That's a good thing to have. Not a lot of communication services have that. We're very flexible and robust communications. Pat mentioned field day earlier, right? We go out there and we put up our radios in locations where we don't have commercial power. And that gives us a lot of flexibility and a lot of robustness. If we can run our stations for 3 days, 4 days without outside power, that makes us very, very robust. We can provide high quality data. Why? Because we put our good names to that. And all of you have done some form of CERT training and so on. It's really easy for you to go outside, make sure you check your home after an earthquake and come back and say, okay, I can fill this out now. I know what's actually going on. Not felt reports, just as important as felt reports. If you have an earthquake, let's say like in Carson, which was a 3.9, 3.8, and you did not feel it, actually sending a not felt report is really great because, as I said, it helps the USGS establish the event boundaries. And people think, well, it didn't feel it. Sending that report, it's good practice on the one hand. On the other hand, you're actually providing additional data. Another thing we can provide through our systems, and I'll show you that when we do the actual live form, is we can add GPS coordinates. That gives a higher level of confidence to the data, and it's just an added benefit in addition to the street address that they're asking for. And we can add observations as a comment box. And very often USGS has pointed out when people even before WinLink, people would say, I'm an amateur radio operator located there and there, and this is what I observed. They find these comments extremely useful. So please use them. And we can actually, through training and exercises, make sure that the quality of our data is extremely high. And we invite you to do that, not just for Shakeout, but for regular exercises as well. The goal is always 20+ observations for any given area, for any given event. And surprisingly, for Carson, we had 50 reports. For the Simi Valley earthquake, about a week and a half after that, or 2 weeks after that, we had 40+ reports. So understand that through WinLink, not through the internet, or thousands through the internet, but just through the WinLink. And we thought, well, is that high enough? And I got an email from USGS saying, we're super impressed. People are actually using that, and the vast majority actually use it through RF. But you can use it through Telnet. If you don't have the setup for doing this through the radio, please, we encourage you to do that with WinLink through Telnet. But it gave them a real sense of confidence that there are people out there who are taking this seriously and who can send this data in when nobody else can. Talked about the 20+. Again, if you can send it in under 90 minutes, under 60 minutes, more power to us, because then that information can do a whole lot of good. And let me quote our friend Rob in Ventura County. Some of you may know him, W6RH. He pointed out something really important when we talked about this at the Ventura County ARRL ACS talk. He said, well, one of the things that happened in the Whittier Narrows earthquake is, in Whittier, they didn't really have a sense of what was going on because the phone lines were gone. So they got all these reports via radio from the city of LA. Oh, things are really tough here. So they, part of their fire department, up and went to LA for mutual assistance. It wasn't until quite a bit later that they realized, oh, we are the hardest hit area, and they came back and then got the mutual aid from the other areas. One of the outcomes of that was that now whenever there's an earthquake, they go into earthquake mode, they drive around to actually assess their own areas before they actually go out and send help. But that's really where you as an amateur radio operator can provide quality data early on in the event and make sure that the resources can be directed where they're most needed. So a couple of lessons that we learned through Did You Feel It? In doing this in a lot of exercises now. People are really motivated to do this. So within an hour and a half, this was for our Shakeout 2020. Within an hour and a half, we had most of the responses already in. There were a couple people that came in later, but by and large, we had the bulk, 90 responses for that exercise come in within an hour. So that was really, really valuable. It was great to see people actually step up. And again, for us, these things are usually going through RF. And that's the quote there, prompt assessment of earthquakes for response. That's what the pager is supposed to do. And that really is where the data comes in, extremely useful. Shakeout, this is a blow up of this. You can see it is pretty active. There are a lot of stations that are reporting in because one, it's a lot of fun, but two, it's also one of those ways that we can practice. And the big groups here were LAX, Ventura County, and of course, San Diego. And that's grown. So we've got a lot more participation now in Ridgecrest, East Kern County, and so on. And we'll talk about Shakeout this year in a moment. But there are also amateur radio implications. Because Did You Feel It challenges us to take our views of how traffic should be moved or can be moved and gives us a litmus test of is that actually how the traffic is most effectively moved. It gives us a real data point as to are we doing the right thing here. For ARRL LAX, this is our model that we've adopted after testing a variety of models. We tend to aggregate all the out-of-area traffic at a single gateway. And that can be a portable gateway. It can be a pre-existing gateway that also has HF capability, right? We're assuming in this case, we don't have any local internet. And then we've got stations. Rob can send with Vara FM. Mary can send with Arden. James can send with Packet. They all aggregated here at the gateway. And the gateway then takes care of forwarding out of the area. And that has proven to be extremely effective. Oops. You could, of course, Rob could send the information if he is HF directly to out of area, but there are reasons for not doing it this way. And we'll come to that when we talk about Shakeout this year, because that's exactly what happened. And then from the out of area gateway in this area, it's K6SDR in San Francisco. It could be N0DAJ in Arizona, many of the other gateways. It can go to the internet and from there to USGS. So that's a pretty robust way of doing that. In our exercises, we practice that. And let me tell you, all our deployment exercises are exercises where you have to go outside and set up. In the beginning of COVID, we said it was okay for people to do that at their homes, but not from within their shack. So they had to set up outside. And people got really creative with their driveways and their gardens and so on. But this is how the traffic usually works. We aggregate it, and in here in blue are the gateways, right? We aggregate it at a gateway, and then in this case, you know, this is AJ7C in Culver City. He's got also HF. He can actually forward it out of the area, just like some of the other gateways, and that's really, really a good model. Let's talk about Shakeout 2020. This is the plot that USGS put together of the responses they could actually plot, meaning they had a complete address. And they received, remember I just showed you 90 for Shakeout 2020. This year they received 774 WinLink Did You Feel It messages from all over the country. And that was a big step in the right direction. By the way, about 73% of those were sent via RF, and that means either VHF or HF, and 27% were sent either through the internet or through Arden Mesh. You can't tell the difference on the software for that, but 774, way to go. It was really a fantastic way of doing that. You can see in red here, those are the people who submitted as ARRL SoCal Shakeout. ETO is the MCOM training organization. They're a national organization. They've got all their members to send in a Did You Feel It? About 300 of them, a little over 300 of them sent in a Did You Feel It report. And you can see people really got into that. For the ARRL Shakeout, for us in SoCal, we used the multi-band approach. That's typical of all our exercises. we try to use as little infrastructure locally as possible. So we use 2 meters, 40 meters, 75, and mesh. And you know, you were mentioning NVIS earlier as being one of the things we're looking into, or I'm interested in. I have to say, we tried NVIS with this a couple of weeks beforehand, and after 9 o'clock, forget about it. That didn't work as well. However, what worked extremely well was getting to those gateways outside of the area on 40 meters, on 20 meters. That worked extremely well. We used multiple modes. VARA FM, VARA HF. For us, we use APRS for hospital service levels. You can talk about that if you want to. And it was multi-group. So we had LAX, Aries LAX involved, San Diego, Ventura County, East Kern County, and Sierra EBC down in Tijuana. They were all part of this part of the exercise. Now, let me tell you a little bit what happened with HF, because there's a temptation for hams to go with their favorite modes. One of the things that happen when you have several large groups, like here, activate at the same time to the same event, guess what happens? The same thing that happens when you're trying to take the freeway into the city on a Monday morning or coming back on a Friday night, you get a traffic jam. So we actually ran into quite an HF traffic jam because there is only a very narrow part of the HF bands that's available for this kind of stuff. And there are quite a few gateways. And let's face it, if one station is hanging on to that gateway, nobody else can really send traffic, no matter how that works out. So keep that in mind. There are some groups, including Ventura County, that are now experimenting with Starlink to try and move that data out of the area. But that's really one of the things that we need to think as amateur radio operators. We need to think not just as radio operators, but as network managers. And that's true for all events you take part, whether you're doing parades, you're doing events like Baker to Vegas. It is really, really important to think about it. How do my actions affect the network? And we found that to be especially true there. We got all our messages out. We got them out in time. I have to say that. But in our case, KN6BKT, who managed the gateway, did a phenomenal job looking for free frequencies and moving the traffic. Aries LAX Northeast alone moved 98 messages out of area. Not just did you feel it, but a ton of other messages. And that's a lot of traffic. That's in addition to the 69 messages we sent to the LA County Medical Alert Center and the other local messages we sent. So it was a lot of traffic for Shakeout this year, right? But so far, so good. I've talked a lot about what did you feel it is. Are there any questions so far, or shall we go into a demo?
Let's go into a demo.
All right. And if you have WinLink installed on your computer, I invite you, in fact, I encourage you to participate tonight and follow along. I'll go at a speed that'll make that easy. And please stop me if I'm going too fast. If you have questions, I've given these presentations many times. Sometimes people want to see it again, and I'm happy to do that. I'm all yours tonight, all right? So this is WinLink Express. Same thing like most email. For those of you who remember the old Outlook, what is it, Outlook 98? That's pretty much what it looks like. In this case, we'll start a new message. An earthquake has happened, let's say at 7:50, right? Then we go to select template. We go to standard templates because it's part of the standard library. Then we find the USGS information right here, the folder. And it's available, the Did You Feel It is available in Spanish and in English. We'll use the English version here. Mostly because my Spanish is non-existent. And let me move it over from the other screen. That always happens, doesn't it? There you go. Now you can see it. Did you feel it, right? All right, so that's the form. Let me go and point out one thing first. There are really only 3 fields you need to fill out in this if you want to send, even if you have more to say, but there are 3 fields that you must fill out. One is you need to choose whether it's an exercise or a real event. One is did you feel it? The time and date of the earthquake. That makes a lot of sense. And you need to give them your street address. All right, but that's it. This one is a toggle up here, so it's pretty obvious that that needs to be filled out. Then here, the same yes, no, time, date, and the street address. That's it. If that's all you fill out, that's fine, right? But there's a lot more to it. So let me show you a couple of things that make this special compared to the internet version. One, as I told you before, you have the option to choose between exercise and real event. If you know the USGS event ID, and some of you may get the notifications from USGS, you can add that in there. It's completely voluntary, helps USGS on the database end of things, but you don't have to add that in there. But if it's a real event, you fill that out. Tonight, we're using exercise because this is a demo for you. And let's give this puppy a name. You don't have to give it a name. This is completely optional. But Santa Clarita ARC, am I getting this right?
Yes, you are.
There you go. And you can fill that in. If you have an exercise, it actually makes a lot of sense to have everybody fill that in the same, because USGS does look at the exercise data quite closely. And when you have an exercise and you fill that in, they know it's part of the same exercise, right? And then did you feel it? Let's say, yes, we felt it. Again, if you didn't feel it, you can say no. Fill in the time of the earthquake, your location, go to the bottom and click submit, and you're done. But that's still valuable information, right? But in this case, we'll say, yes, we felt it. Time of the earthquake, 7:50 sounds right. You can click on this. You can certainly change it if you want to. We say the earthquake happened at 7:30. Let's agree on that. You can change the date up here. You can click on that, change the date if you want to. For those of you who remember Northridge, look up the time and the exact date, and that's local time. And you can still send a report in today because it's valuable historical data, right? There was no did you feel it during Northridge at the time, right? So click OK. Then here we're filling in the street address, and USGS wants us to remind everybody during the training that street address means your house number, your street, your city, and your state. If you add the zip, more power to us. But by and large, that's actually about 30 reports during Shakeout came in, and what people did was this. Now, Hurlbut, but believe it or not, there's more than one Hurlbut street in the U.S. So, so please do send in your city and state. That helps enormously. For those of you who have GPSs attached to your computers, you can and enabled in WinLink, and I can show you later if you want to how to do that. You can fill that in manually, of course. I can delete this and fill it in manually, or if you have a GPS dongle connected, then it will fill it automatically for you. But to 4 decimal points, you don't need to do more than 4, right? But pretty much everybody has a GPS now in their phones, and there are tons of apps. You can look that up super easy, right? And you can add that as an added benefit. All right, let's go through and again, this is all you need to fill out up until that point. And again, GPS is even optional, but the point there is that's all you need to fill out. If you don't want to do any more than that, go to submit and you're done. But let's go through this. What was your situation during the earthquake? I was inside a building giving a talk. Were you asleep? No, I wasn't asleep. I don't know about you guys, but we'll check that at the end, right? Did others nearby feel it? And remember, this was exactly the question. These are the questions we found in the modified Mercalli scale, right? Let's say most felt it, right? How would you describe the shaking? I thought it was pretty moderate. How did you react? Ooh, well, we call that the macho question, because let me tell you, I've had a couple of people actually say to me, what does the USGS need to know whether I was scared? I'm not scared of anything. That, by the way, it's only guys who ever say that. I've never seen a woman. For a woman, it's a data point. She just moves on, and that's it. Here's the thing. You don't have to fill it out. You can skip to the next question, not say anything if you're uncomfortable with it. You can say not specified. You can say no reaction. If you're cool as a cucumber, very little reaction. There you go. but again, all of this is voluntary. How did you respond, right? Took no action. Ooh, that's pretty common, but dropped in covered. By the way, during Shakeout, a lot of people said move to doorway. And USGS found that really interesting because they're thinking, wow, that's something that we probably need to look into the training and the messaging a little bit more, right? But drop in cover is appropriate response. Was it difficult to stand? Oh, I was sitting, so I don't know. You could say not specified, right? Did you notice any swinging of doors? Yes, slight swinging, and let's just go that creaking noises, slight noise. Rattle, yes. Did pictures move? Yes. And all of this is about physics, if you think about it, right? Objects rattle, how much energy does that take? If pictures on a wall get moved, how much energy does that take? What about furniture and appliances? Now we're talking about much larger. Well, no, they weren't moved. How about a refrigerator? Well, if you have an earthquake that's large enough to move your fridge, you're probably in trouble, right? So let's say no, it didn't shift. Any freestanding walls or fences damaged? Yes, some were cracked. And then here you can add whatever you want to. Let's say hairline cracks. And you can do demo for CRC. And you can have additional information. You could say send via bar HF or FM or like I'm doing tonight, Telnet, right? Click on submit. The feedback here is just for your joy and edification. Don't read too much into that. That's not the actual feedback. This is not the information USGS gets. And I'll show you that in a second. This is for you, just to get an idea. And I think with a couple of entries, it may not be 100% what USGS, but don't worry too much about it. So that's a WinLink side thing. Click on continue. And there's the information we just entered in. This is the actual information that USGS is getting from you. It's an exercise. There's the SCARC 2021 we filled in. And it also adds a couple of more things, right? It adds your call sign, tells it this is a call sign, and it adds an additional timestamp. And here's our comment we put in, right? And I also want you to see that it filled in the email address automatically. So you don't have to worry about it. This is the email address that will send it to USGS. I would leave that in. A couple of people with the ETO, when they did the exercise, didn't feel comfortable with that, so they took that out. But this is, if you're doing an exercise, please send that in. And for those of you who follow along, leave that in there. The other thing we recommend is our friends in Ventura County set up a Did You Feel It site that does the same thing, and they sent you a nice, friendly email back. USGS is one way. The information goes in, and the database processes it, and then it goes onto the website, right, if it can be mapped. And you don't get anything back. Just like on the internet, you don't get any information back. In this case, you can do DYFI at Ventura County Communications, VCCOM, VCCOMM.org. And you can then click on it. You could send it to somebody else. You could send it to Pat if we wanted to. Pat, is that okay if I send it to you? Okay. So you could send it to him as part of the exercise, right? And they post it to Outbox. Now it's in our Outbox. For those of you who have never done WinLink before, let me walk you through how to do this. So we have it in our Outbox. Now we need to pick a session. This isn't like Gmail or Yahoo Mail that you may be familiar with. This is in the Outbox. It sits in the Outbox until you tell it to send. Next step is we choose a session. And here are all our sessions that we have available. We're only focusing on the top here because those are the WinLink sessions that use the gateways. Down here, these are WinLink, but they're peer-to-peer. They're from one station to another station without a gateway. Telnet, all that means is internet. That's all that means. Packet, for those of you who are familiar with packet radio, there are quite a few packet gateways in the area. You can use Packdoor, very expensive, very robust modems. Robust packet, hardly anybody in the US uses it. Seems to be more a European thing. RDOF is sound card-based modulation, modem, I should say. works pretty well, but VARA HF tends to be somewhat higher performance in VARA HF. And I'm just not saying that because Rick Muthing, who came up with RDOF as well as Winmore, he tells people use VARA HF when you can. So VARA HF, for people who do a lot of HF, that's kind of the mode of choice. And VARA FM, there have been a lot more VARA gateways now in the area. San Fernando Valley used to have practically no gateways. I think there are 3 now. And the usage is growing dramatically, in large thanks to the WinLink training classes that David W0DHG, David KK68, Dan NR6V, and Chris W6AH are holding. So if you're interested in that, I'm happy to show you the information later, and you can actually do the courses at 4 one-hour lessons. You can watch them online yourself, or you can actually take one of their free courses and get some information on that. And if you have an Iridium Go, you can set that. But tonight, we're doing it via the internet. So Telnet WinLink is what we'll choose, and it works similarly with the others. Then next thing, you click on Open Session. Where did my session go? Hello? That's the live demo effect, right? All right. What happened to my session? Did it open up on the other side? That's what I get for closing the session. Here, let me close WinLink. All right, let's do this again. And again, this stuff happens. We have a weekly WinLink net where we do these exercises live, and let me just, where we do these exercises live. And let me tell you, this is where stuff really goes wrong. And one of the nice things is the people who participate in that, in our exercises, don't panic anymore, because you know what? Stuff happens. All right, open session. Okay, let me stop the share here for a second. I don't know what's going on. That's actually pretty funny. Let's close WinLink. You can find it. It looks like it's closed. I like this. This is fun. Let's try this again. Aha, there we go. It changed size and it. All right, so let me do this again. Let me share again. And thank you so much for bearing with me. But again, this is live television. What can I say? Right? All right. So we've opened the session here. And we click on Start. And now it's connected to the Amazon cloud. That's how the system works when the internet is present. It actually, well, we can getting some traffic here coming in. And here down, you can see messages sent 1, messages received 1. And that's all it took to send our traffic. We can go to send items, scroll up, and there's our report. And in a moment, we'll check and we'll see whether we already got an answer to this. And Pat, did you already get your report?
Well, give me just a moment. No, I did not, but I'm not on WinLink.
Oh, well, that wouldn't work, right? I just wanted to show
it wouldn't work.
Here's the thing, we'll probably get an error message saying the person's not on WinLink. That's okay. The thing there is, it is extremely easy to do that. Well, there you go. I already got the error message saying you're not on WinLink. But there you go. That's live for you right there. And that's a good information to have. And then we can go to the inbox here. We can see what we got here. Undelivered message. There you go. K6SD, not known.
Now, how was Patrick connected to WinLink, or how should he have? Theoretically, how would you be connected to WinLink tonight, Patrick?
All you have to do is download WinLink Express and then go through the settings up here, the WinLink Express setup.
So he would be connected through Wi-Fi, through his own Wi-Fi at this point, or
yes, just like I am connected through Wi-Fi right now because I don't have a radio on this computer, right? When we do exercises and whatnot, I usually here are the options, right? So Telnet WinLink tells WinLink use the internet connection of the computer. All right. Down here, you have an option for those of you who are into Arden Mesh. You can use Arden Mesh for WinLink. Then you would use Telnet Post Office. But let's say if you're big into HF, you can use VARA HF. And I find a lot of people like contesters and so on have a lot of HF experience. They have an easy time setting up VARA HF. One example, he said, listen, I just need the settings for my radio. And I looked it up on the WinLink program on the reflector. And I sent him the information. And 5 minutes later, I get a WinLink message saying, well, that was easy. So it's just one of those things. If you wanted to do VARA HF, for instance, you would pick this. And again, I don't have a radio connected to this. You would choose the VARA HF WinLink session. Let me show you this because there have recently been some upgrades to the maps on here that are really, really cool. But I'll just walk you through that real quick. So in this case, it automatically started VARA, the TNC. I'm not sure where that's located. There it is. Sorry, I need to move you guys out of the way here to actually bring up. I'll just show you this is what the VARA modem looks like. And again, right now, this is not super realistic because my 7100 isn't connected to it. But that's what the modem looks like. And essentially, I've already set this up. And now what I would do is I can go to the channel selection. And it'll actually give me, let's just not recalculate this right now. But it actually gives me an estimate what my path reliability is. Don't look at this as the gospel truth. This is an estimate. So very often you find that some of the gateways here in the yellow area actually work extremely well, right? But that's something that you as an experienced operator can very often do that. But it's a great starting point. And then you can pick one of the gateways here. AJ7Cs in Culver City. In my case, I will usually on HF go to K000000 or K6SDR or one of those stations, N0DAJ, and you can just click on that. And then it gives you a dial frequency, and that's the frequency you enter on your radio. And when you're ready to go, you make sure it's a clear frequency. It's very important on all the modes. You click on start and you connect that way. There's another option of doing that, and that's the map. And let me pull that up for you to just give you an image. And that shows you all the VARA HF gateways globally, actually, right? And the colors here tell you what your path reliability estimate is, right? So right now, KB6YNO, for whatever reason, seems to not have a good path quality, but K6SDR does. Again, don't look at this as the gospel truth, but you can actually see any of these, and now you can actually pick one of them. Utah is usually really good for us down here. And you can pick that, see how it changed the information up here. And then you can select that channel and then enter the information here. You set your radio to that. Unless you have your radio set up to do it automatically through CAT, then it'll change it for you. And in this case, it'll be 80 meters, right? And then you do the same thing. You click start, just like we did with the principle of the sessions is the same for all of them. And in Packet, I don't have my Packet running right now. Packet for local 2 meters, 70 centimeters, exactly the same thing. VARA FM, the same thing. What you don't have in VARA FM, it'll give me an error message because I run VARA FM manually, but just want to show you, you don't have the channel. You do have the channel selection, but you don't have the cool map for a couple of reasons. Click on open session. And then this is just an error because I'm actually not running the system there. Yeah. Oh, what should I show you? Find that. There we go. I think I need 4 screens on this for the future. Well, we need to get back into in-person meetings. That's the other thing, right?
Yes.
So now with the system, is there a reflector or something like that you can test your WinLink system out? Similar to Echolink, Echolink you can connect to check out your voice and everything like that. Can you send a message to a bot or something in WinLink to make sure your system's working properly?
Excellent question. Let's do that right now. You can send something to test. This is a test for post outputs, and you can do that, and that'll do pretty much exactly what you want it to do. So in this case, you can see my "Did you feel it" report was received. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. And we just send out a test message, right? And our friends in Ventura County actually are kind enough to have this really friendly message that sends you back that also does something similar, Gary, to what you were suggesting, right? That thank you for sending a "Did you," but this is specific to the "Did you feel it" report. But if you want to have a general message, absolutely. Give me a moment here and we'll check our traffic here. And I'll, in the meantime, go back to VARA FM. And if you want to, we can do a whole session on VARA FM, but there's training coming up. If you want to, I can send you that information as well. You can go to the channel selection here, and this is based on your grid square. And this populates it with all the stations in the area in a grid square. And understand this is 2 meters, so it is heavily dependent. For instance, obviously I can reach these guys pretty well. K6IRF depends on the day. AJ7C, for instance, I cannot reach directly. He's right in my radio shadow in Culver City because I have a hill right where I'm at, right? NR6V, I can reach by digipeating through K6YZF11. He's got the best coverage of all the stations here in the Southland, simply because of his location, Eagle Grove. But these are the stations that are in my area. Funny enough, I can usually reach the Tijuana stations pretty well. And that is 200 kilometers or 135 miles from my location. And I do that on 10 watts with a Omni J-pole. So that kind of blew us away the first couple of times we tried that, right?
How
And
high
this is
your
FM?
J-pole?
This is FM. On a vertically polarized 10-watt Kenwood.
And what's the elevation, or how high is above ground is the J-pole?
Let's see. I've got a 12-foot painter's pole on the first floor of on the top floor of the building. Right, it's a 2-story building. So I'm not. This is. I mean. Again, and this is something you can actually experiment with and have fun with. Gateway setups, we usually tell people, play with it on peer-to-peer for about a year before you start putting up a gateway, because putting up a gateway is easy. Running it is a lot of hard work because you've got Windows updates, you've got sound card issues, and so on. So you're checking your gateway 2-3 times a day, making sure it's running. So let's go back to the internet and check whether the test yielded a result. Service, there you go. There's your ping back, right? The following message was received by WinLink. That's exactly the question you had, Gary, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So excellent question there. And by the way, we can spend hours on WinLink just going through this. There's a thing called catalog request. You can look for weather data, news. You can see what WinLink people are in your area. This is all weather reports from all over the place. You can actually request data if you want to. understand one of the things that we do for our operators who are participating is we also encourage them to send email or WinLink messages to SMS to let their loved ones know who may live outside of the area. I'm okay. I'm with, I don't know, mom, dad, or the kids. We're at that location. We're okay. Don't worry about us. So it's outgoing, letting them know we're safe after an event. So there are multiple layers that we've developed this to make it beneficial for our community. It's not just about did you feel it. I think did you feel it is an extremely important part of what we do, but it's also about letting our loved ones know we're okay, or we might need help, things like that. So that, in that respect, did you feel it has been brilliant. It certainly pushed me to make my HF skills more robust. I'm feeling really comfortable now setting up my antenna, you know, even on top of a parking structure. And I don't think you can get worse ground than a concrete block, right? But it works. I was able to hit all the gateways and get really good speeds during the shakeout. Are there any other questions I can address right now for you? But great question, Gary.
And that was, I'm sorry, that was on your HF that you were also saying you were on top of the roof or the parking structure?
Yeah. You want
And
to
those
show
frequencies,
you
those, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
while we're at it, right? One of the things that we do, we document our events. The first time we asked people to take pictures, they're like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. Now everybody takes pictures for a couple of reasons. It helps you remember what your setup was and to troubleshoot it. The other thing is this isn't field day. We don't have a couple of hours to set up. The instructions to our operators is from the moment the hospital liaison tells you where to set up, you've got 15 minutes to set up your station on VHF. If you're adding HF, you've got another 15 minutes. But the thing there is, this is our Shakeout album. The thing there is, we don't have hours, and you also have to think about breaking down, because the hospital might have to be evacuated, and then you need to move with it. So we're trying to do this relatively quickly. So this was our APRS map. So while we were doing WinLink, we're also using APRS on the same frequency to get an idea of what the hospital status level is. And just, I mean, any of you ARRL LAX members? Claude, yeah, I know. All right, so everybody but Claude, let me ask you this. How many of you would send traffic to KM6 TKJ-4 patients to that hospital, just looking at the map, without knowing anything about the service levels? Nobody.
No, nobody.
Right? How many of you would send them to, this was actually Kaiser Hollywood, or the Kaiser Los Angeles Medical Center, right? How many of you would feel comfortable sending patients there? Show hands? Yes, no?
No.
But they're green, right? So you could probably send people there. That's red. You don't want to send anybody there, but this is green. So just with a simple APRS map, we can visually say, this is what's happening. Anyways, this is their station. This was us on top. And this is where we were set up, right? So let me show you what the antenna, there's the antenna setup. You can see this is an hour's worth of work. This took me 10 minutes to set up, right? It's a simple pull-up pole. This is an end-fed 60-foot wire that I attached just here at one of the cables they had, right? And the other end is attached to the pop-up here. And you know what? Worked like a charm. Just a simple inverted V, nothing special, and we broke it down in 15 minutes, the entire station.
Now, if you're using HF, do you still need a TNC?
Well, what we do is we use sound card based systems. So what you do is you use a signal link or a DRA board, for example, and the IC7100, a lot of radios do have sound cards built in now. For the 7100, makes it super easy. The sound cards are really good and easy to set up with WinLink or other digital modes. With the FT991A, and I know I'm going to make myself really unpopular with that. We have 6 of them in ARRL LAX Northeast. And they have great sound cards, but they were not built to really switch between voice and digital easily. So there are a lot of menu items. All of our operators switched back to Signalings or DRA boards. Just know that. Again, it's a brilliant radio, but the way they implemented the switch between sound and voice is a pain. And once you have a Signalink or DRA board, it's plug and play. And you're thinking, why? It's not like Yesu is new to digital modes. Anyway, so but with the ICOMs, any of you with a 7300, they work brilliantly on HF on this. The 9700 works really well once you figure out what the menu settings are. But understand this for us is a pretty quick setup. And again, you would think not the best job, worked brilliantly. You had great connections on 40 meters to Arizona, San Francisco, Las Vegas, etc. So that worked really well. I'm really confident. I'm really, really happy with the way this worked out. And again, the goal here is not what's the maximum we can bring, but what's the least we can get away with. Because that's really what we can bring. We may not be able to drive the car up there. We'll have to carry it up there. Keep that in mind. How do we carry it up there? Things like that we really think about. And are we getting those extra points for a contest? Probably not. Enough to set up and actually help save lives. Probably. And I'll leave you with that. And by the way, my 2-meter antenna is hanging right down here. Right? So
that's the J-pole?
Yeah, that's the J-pole. That's the N9TAX that we use for deployments. They're really, really great. The important thing, and I keep reminding people of that, is have a strain. I actually have an even cheaper J-pole for my regular nets, which is all aluminum, right? But have strain relief on these because it's relatively thin at parts because this is ladder line. And so if they get stretched too much, obviously you can damage your antenna. So you can see here's the strain relief. But again, these are pretty solid setups. It was actually quite windy that day and nothing moved. What we did here is we used a bungee, and bungees work better than attaching it directly because essentially they work like a spring. So those are things that we learned. And this is a 10-pound weight. Kept the entire thing up and running in no time. And I still had on this pole, this is the Spider Beam Mini. That's the 10-meter one. I still had about another 8 feet to go up here, if I had wanted that. And you can see people really get into this. We had 4 stations in this small space, right? And that's how we move traffic. All right. Any other questions or anything I can show you? One of the things that I want to encourage you is a lot of people feel intimidated by WinLink. It's only hard for the first hour. Most of you are experienced HF. The hard part, you guys already know. You're experienced contesters, HF operators. You've done the radio for a long time. So that's not the hard part. It's having that confidence in yourself to do that. And I really, really would love to encourage you to at least download WinLink, install it, put your call sign in, your password, and send a "Did you feel it?" exercise report just because to get that sense, or send something to test and come back. I think once you start doing that and you say, you know what, this might be useful, because let's face it, Santa Clarita is a beautiful area, but in LA County's terms, there are not enough people living there for them to worry about it for the first 3 days.
We're goners.
Yeah, they're going to look where most of the people live. That's the harsh truth of this. They'll help as soon as they can, but they're limited resources. We will have to do this. Same for Pasadena. We'll have to do this on our own at least for the first 3 days. And so I would encourage you to use that community you already have and build on top of that. And let me tell you, we have had a lot of, and this is all recorded, right, Tamir? I'll totally admit to it.
Even if somebody sees it, admit to nothing.
But I understand please make it an environment where failure isn't just an option, where it's required. If you're not failing, you're not pushing hard enough. We've learned a lot of things by things not working out the way we expected. But we've done it with good sense of humor. One of my favorite experiences, I have a little bit that reputation that Oliver Station always works, right? So I was net control for one of our nets, and we had 8 other stations on there. They all checked in, and none of their check-ins worked. And they all frantically look around, they check their cables, they check their everything. And I'm like, that's unusual for 8 of them not to work. Usually it's 1 or 2, and then the others work. And I looked over, my signaling wasn't turned on. So I quietly turned it back on, right? Everybody sent their check-ins. They were super happy. Everything, whatever they did, they felt worked, right? And then at the end, after the last person had checked in, and I said, it also helps when net control has the signaling turned on. There was laughter on the net. You know, we moved on with our fun time. But please make that part of it, because on that worst day, and I'm using the term that our cert instructor from Santa Clarita used. I said, on that worst day, it won't be fun. And so get the fun in now that you are doing this, you know, on the blue skies with friends and having a good time, right? And encourage each other and say, listen, we'll figure this out. You know, that's for us, it's become kind of a team building exercise. The people in our group, you know, they're a great team. And when somebody doesn't know the answer, somebody else said, try this. I think it's really cool the way things have worked out. Anyways, any other questions?
Patrick, do you think that the tsunami report for the pool, like from the Ridgecrest earthquake, would bring in help? When you look at that one, I mean, it was far enough away, but the pool was definitely washing over and everything like that. And when you see that one, you realize fairly strong, fairly far away, because it wasn't, you kind of get that jello feel on it. But the objective is like, even with field day, have your failures and have your thing like that happen when you're drilling. So when you have the real McCoy happen, that you're ready.
Oliver, we're very, very lucky here, because over the past year, we've had 2 HF in the park days where we've set up just like field day. And the first time we had like 4 stations set up, and we were just operating under the club call of Whiskey 6, Johnny Walker, and just making contacts. And we did it again, and both times happened to be by design on a CQ SSB DX contest weekend. So it was fun. We were working all over, and some of the stations were working QRP, and we were working, you know, up to 100 watts with just wire antennas, and it was great.
And it builds confidence, doesn't it? To say, listen, we can set up wherever, we can make this happen.
But I'm going to have to work harder to get it set up in half an hour.
You know, here's a fun story. I shouldn't tell these stories, especially not on a recording, but here's a fun story. So Chris, W6AH, it was the first time he was at the Medical Alert Center, right? He shows up with his bags, and, you know, Jeff, who is our person at the Medical Alert Center, he looked at him and said, "Oh, great! You've got 15 minutes. There's an 80-meter net, and you need to be on." And Chris said, "Say what now?" I should show you. Actually, before I let you go, I'll show you what he finally said. But you know what? Kudos to Chris. He did it, and within 15 minutes, he set up within 15 minutes, and he checked in, and he made sure he was there. So, you know, it's just that challenge sometimes looks crazy. Let me show you the what he set up, because he wanted to test a variety of antennas. Let me show you this, because I think you guys you guys particularly will get a kick out of that. There you go. Where's the share button? Share screen. There you go. All right, this is what he wound up with after he had time to actually set this up, right? I mean, he had a beam here, and I don't know, there were wire antennas. This is kind of a delta loop, a chameleon delta loop. This, I have no idea what this was. And this was Jeff's J-pole. By the way, that's the same J-pole I use for our nets on a regular basis, right? But you can see he had, I think, 8 antennas set up total. So this was his setup. And by the way, this is how I checked into the 80-meter net in San Diego with that loop, but he got it up and running in 15 minutes. And that's Chris, by the way. So kudos to him. Throughout these challenges, you'd be surprised. Obviously, he didn't set up all the other antennas in 15 minutes. When he had some breathing space, he did that. But this was the setup that he worked, and you can see his WinLink there. And they managed a WinLink gateway all the way in Texas on 20 meters. So, more power to them. And that's really what it comes down to, because it may not just be that did you feel it, maybe your family living outside of the area. And it's better for you to contact them than for them trying to send you something. Because if 10 million people's relatives start clogging up the traffic going the other way, we're not getting the help we need. Right. That was also a big, big lesson out of this shakeout. Don't let other people connect into you. You connect out, So anyways, oh, gee, I've taken up way too much of your time. Any more questions? Okay, did I excite you enough to give WinLink a try at least?
Yes.
Patrick, you're not officially logged into WinLink at this point. I am, and I did since we started.
Okay. Well,
I registered since we started. I did that. I saw that. So we're there. I appreciate it, Oliver. Yeah. Really appreciate you coming out and helping us.
Randy.
And please, Oliver. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
And please reach out if there's anything we can do to assist. Understand we're bloody beginners in pretty much every respect, but we've been in your shoes and trying to build something new and trying out something. You're not alone. You've got friends all over the place, friends in Ventura, you've got friends here in LAX, you've got friends all over the place, and we're happy to work with you and make sure that you have a good time with WinLink and really can protect your communities. Ultimately, that's what this is all about, that we protect our communities and our loved ones. And with that, I do want to say thank you so much for inviting me, and feel free to stop by, participate in any of our exercises, and we're happy to work with you. All right?
All right.
Thank
you very much.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Oliver.
It was a remarkable presentation. Thank you very, very much.
Really appreciate it.
So